Where did you come up with this energy and drive, this positive emotional energy? Because I really think positive emotional energy is the scarcest commodity on the planet, because it supercharges money, it supercharges connectedness, love, community, all the spiritual stuff that go with it. How did that start for you?
Wow, what a compliment. Well, thank you for noticing. Probably from my mom, my parents. They would always tell me, "You're epic as truly Carmichael. You can do anything you believe that you can." And whenever I doubted myself or didn't do well in a test at school or whatever, they would always just encourage me and tell me that I could do better, but in a positive way. I remember I was never I have two sisters, one older, one younger, and they were both getting straight A's, and I was always getting B's and C's, not failing out, but I was never like the star student in the family. And every report card, I'd have to have the talk and go to my parents' bedroom and sit on the bed and would look at my report card and, the expectations to do better. But they always made me feel like it was possible. Always filled me with hope that I could do it. At the beginning, it was just my parents feeding it into me. As I got older, and if I fast forward to now, my own YouTube channel is that for me. Every day this morning I was listening to Zig Ziglar for an hour. And Zig is past, but one of the legends of personal development and speaking. And as I'm going on my walk in the morning with my 35-pound vest on, I got Zig in my ear telling me to set goals. It's like, so you can't help but the more you have that in your environment, the more you're going to want to go and do awesome things and pour into other people as well. We get to be intentional. Most people wake up and they just start to doom scroll through their emails, through news, through Instagram, and they start to feel really negative. If you load my Instagram, my YouTube, it's all entrepreneurship, inspiration. I got Zig Ziglar on, I got some quote from Martin Luther King. I got this like great stuff. I don't look at my phone and my news and get disappointed. I get inspired, but that's a choice to turn off everything else and turn on the things that make me want to believe in myself more. The best thank you is to go and do the work. Like go make some kind of change. Take that idea that you've been sitting on and go do something about it. And then in 2 years, come back and find me or Lee and say, "Hey, that show you guys did changed my life. It was the spark."
One of the things you talked about in the book is starting where you're at going forward. Because I talk to a lot of leaders and they think it's pretty daunting. They'll never be the status of pick the leader, a Jack Welch or anyone. And you talk about starting where you're at, and what's your advice for getting leaders to really start moving in that direction and being okay with where they're at and going from there?
Well, several people have been associated with that quote: "Start where you are with what you have, where you're at." And I have found that if you look at the science of people making personal change, you'll find James Cleary's got a great book. You've probably read it, on habits, and what he finds is small changes over time make the biggest, most sustainable differences. And so when I'm working with somebody, we start small. We start talking about what Stephen Covey would call your circle of control. What do you have control over? Well, I have control over me. Okay, so let's stay in that circle. And how can we start to evolve a leadership profile in a way that works for you? And so in my experience, the mindset one has to have, the growth mindset one has to have, is one that's built on things very well. This is Six Sigma. This is continuous improvement 101. It's let's start making some thoughtful changes and doing them in a way that are repeatable. And so when I'm working with leaders, we start with where they are. The next thing we do is we do a deep dive on where they've been. And Because what tends to happen, and I know you've been through this because all the work you've done in the corporate world. Let me step back. When I was just doing a talk in Arizona day before yesterday, and or whatever day, I don't even know what day it is, recently, and I had the audience at the very beginning imagine. I said, who in your lifetime has made the most profound impact on you? And they all think about it. And then they all, and then I have them talk with each other about it for a few minutes. And to a person, it's virtually always a family member or a near family member. And I guarantee you, for the most part, they didn't go get their MBA. And I guarantee you that they don't work against 13 competencies that you have to get better at. But these people had the most profound influence on them. And I say, well, how did they do that? Were they trained? Not really, no. And we end up at a place where we identify, well, they had high standards for me. To a person, this person expected a lot of me, and they cared about me. Tough-minded on standards, tender-hearted with how they worked with me. No compromise on performance, but they loved me. And when we start looking at it, and we have them basically say, okay, here's where we can start. Let's look at this tapestry of experience you have with people like that who've had a profound influence on you in your life. And let's draw some conclusions about what works for you based on your own experience, because you know what great leadership looks like. You just told me about the people that had the most profound impact on you. And so we start there and we have them look at their own life, and it's amazing to me. They uncover all these insights into what works for them that have been lost while they're trying to address the 13 competencies that are listed in the performance review. All the companies, your companies, my companies, we were telling them, here are the 13 things you need to do if you want to be effective here. And I'll tell you what the most important is. Well, I'll tell you the number. Okay? Well, that's important to us, but it's not what makes them tick. And they tend to put all that human experience they had, which is really what motivates them, in the parking lot while they're trying to make me happy as a CEO, showing that they're addressing their 13 competencies on quality of judgment, analytical rigor, communication skills, all this mumbo jumbo. Not that that's not important. But first, I find that you have to be anchored in who you are and what works for you, and then you can take on the challenge of meeting the needs of the enterprise. Most enterprises don't help the individual develop their own agenda. They just are advocating the agenda of the enterprise. Look, we got to create value, and we got to do it now. I don't have time for you. And in my experience, you don't have time not to deal with them. In all my experience, the more I pour into the workforce in terms of being tough-minded on standards and tender-hearted with their development, the more I pour into that, the more they grow, the better they do, and the more we prosper. And somehow in my corporate life with KKR and other companies, we tend to be so results oriented that we neglect that part of the process.
Foundationally in the book, and I work with a lot of founders, entrepreneurs, companies ranging from startup to $60 billion plus market caps. Mindset seems to be everything, and you reference it so much. So if you can, talk about that a little bit and why it's so important.
Yeah, I think oftentimes, especially as business owners get into this higher level, 7, 8, 9 figures, we often think, oh, my mindset's great. I don't need to work on it. But we always say new level, new devil. You're going to a place that you've never been before, right? And so if you are not coming from an abundant mindset, you will not go after the contracts that that are falling at your feet, or you might not let go of that key person on your team that you need to let go of, or just really face the fears that are coming up, or maybe you will be coming from a when it comes around money and decisions that you need to make around money, you might be holding on too tightly and miss out on incredible opportunities. It runs all the way through, because you as the CEO have to be the visionary of the company. It's almost like you have to see a reality that other people can't see yet. And that comes from being able to live in your imagination, no matter what is going on. Like, you have to be able to jump up and down for your team and say, this is the best month ever. Or, we have we are jumping into this incredible future of the company, even if things are falling apart in the company. And that takes such a resilient mindset. And for myself, Lee, it's something that I literally work on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love in the book when you talk about letting go of what you know. And am I thinking big enough? Because it makes sense to me. If we can't imagine it, allow it to happen, there's so much that goes on there. But letting go of what you know, and am I thinking big enough? Most startup entrepreneurs don't really spend much time there. So, talk about that a little bit. I love this, especially letting go of what you know concept.
Yeah. And I think it really runs all the way across. We're creatures of habit, and that saying, what got you here won't get you there. And so as much as we want to jump into the future and we have this big vision, we've got to let go of what is dragging us down. And so it may have been great to get us where we are, but it's actually holding you back. So for instance, if you have your hands in several areas of the company because you have, as you are smaller, that will actually choke the growth of your business. You have to be able to get out of the way so that your leadership team can lead. And you may be missing, new ways of approaching things because you're so used to always having the answer, but maybe your team has a more creative solution. So it's letting go of your behaviors. It's letting go of maybe people on the team that were great to a certain point, but they're not the ones to take you to the next level. It may be letting go of revenue streams that, they were great when you were smaller, but they're not profitable as you grow. So, different offerings, different ways that you communicate. And I think it's important to constantly be sifting through and sorting what is working and what is not, and then double down on what is working, and then see a bigger vision from that. And I can speak to that a little bit. Business owners just really think way too small generally.
Yeah, and I think that's great. Before we get into it, are there any tricks or techniques or, just helpful pointers to get folks to let go of what they know with the right intent?
Herein lies the challenge, Lee, is often we don't realize we're doing it. It can often be unconscious. And so I think it's really important when you do work with a mentor that you have someone that's holding you accountable and someone that's really going to be honest with you. Like, okay, you keep showing up with this and you keep saying you're going to make a change and you're not. Like, this isn't working. So having that really honest person in your life that's going to tell you the truth, I think is critical. But also just looking at yourself in the mirror. And number one, we have to take responsibility for everything that's happening in the company. So blaming other people on the teams that things aren't working out, we made the decision to bring them on in the first place. So that it starts with that, taking responsibility for everything. And then, just really taking a cold, hard look. I would list out every department of the company. So everything from, your vision, your strategic vision, your revenue streams, your marketing, your sales, your operations, your team, every aspect. And then just rate yourself from 0 to 10, 10 being great, or rate that department or different aspects of it. And if it's not up there in the 8, 9, you need to really look at letting that go or making a change. And it's one of those things where your gut kind of knows you need to, but your head is in the way. I'm sure, I don't know if you've experienced that, where you try to talk yourself out of it because it's usually that's the fear that comes up. But when you do make that decision and you do let it go, it's just the most freeing feeling ever.
Yeah, I think when it comes to team members, and you talk in your book about embracing the conflict and going for it, a lot of leaders, they want the person they hired to work out, especially and even when everybody around them is saying this is the wrong person.
Yes.
And because they didn't set up expectations correctly around what's expected and whatever outcome that they should be owning, they just keep pushing for it. It's a difficult conversation to have. That's another piece here to talk about is why do we avoid the conflict when it's probably the highest value leadership work that we should be doing at any point in time? What would you say to that?
Yeah, I think people have a hard time with conflict in general. And I used to as well. I was the middle child, Jan Brady, like, can't we all just get along sort of thing. But I realize it doesn't work in business and you have to be willing to have them. And it's usually never as bad as we make it up in our head, but it's way worse if you let it simmer because it becomes much bigger than it is. So I like to be really direct and, like you said, go towards, it's really embracing conflict, not creating conflict, but embracing it as part of moving to the next level and going towards that elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about, but it's on their mind. And when you do, I think people respect you a lot more. And, if you're not talking about it, it's going to simmer amongst your team and build frustration. Sometimes we just, we want it to work out. We want that for everybody. We don't hire someone in hoping that it doesn't work out and we're going to have to let them go. It's like my least favorite thing. But I also know that it's not fair for that person either to be in a position that's not serving them to their highest good. It's like saying, well, I want to stay in this relationship because, they're not going to find anyone better. And that's not really fair of us either. So it's easier to, if you've done all the things, you've done the training, you've had the conversations and it's still not happening, you've got to have A players if you're going to go to the Super Bowl. If you're super serious about this year being your best year ever, you need your best players on the team. And just because somebody is okay, the question to ask yourself is, would you hire them again? And if the answer is no, then you know your answer. You know what you need to do.
I find that most people are doing what they think they're supposed to do instead of what they were meant to do. And you mentioned Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, in your book. And he makes the point that coming up with a bigger life purpose can be too overwhelming, but you can have lots of meanings throughout life that lead up to culminating to what this is. So talk about that a little bit, because I really do see a lot of leaders doing what they think they're supposed to do. And I just watch the exhaustion waves happen as they go through it. And I know you experienced it as well. How do they think about coming up with what they were meant to do instead of doing what they're supposed to do?
Yeah, it's a tough question and it's a journey, but I'll start with 3 questions, Lee. Ask yourself this and really sit with these questions because they're not easy. What are you truly good at? Be honest with yourself. What am I really good at? I think I'm a good singer. My wife has convinced me I'm not, so I'm probably not. Number 2, Lee, what are you passionate about? What gets you excited? What gets you up in the morning without an alarm clock? And then when you marry those two together and you say, okay, then would I do it for free? Because Lee, I don't need to tell you, writing a book, unless you're Stephen King or John Grisham or some big celebrity, you're not going to make money writing a book, but you do it because you have a love affair with sharing your story with others because you hope it will impact them. But if you can start to answer those three questions, what are you good at? Number two, what are you passionate about? So much so you would do it for free. So if you can start to weave those three questions in, that will start to give you some sense for where you are and where you need to go. And for me, it occurred through a fire because I was fired from my job because I was so focused on me, Lee, because I thought my purpose in life was to ensure that my family was never in poverty again. And while that's a worthwhile goal, that should not be the driving force of my life. And I realized because I got fired very early in my career, I was so focused on me. So once you start to answer those questions, Lee, and you start small and you explore, but here's the telltale sign. There's a saying that goes, you die twice in life. The day they bury you or put you in a mausoleum, the second time is the last time somebody mentions your name. So if we can let that be our North Star, how do I impact lives? So long after I'm gone, I'm still mentioned because I know I've left fruit on my tree because of the impact that I've had. So if you start there as a North Star, because most of us, our purpose is never about totally serving us. I've never met anyone that says my purpose in life is totally only to feed me. It's usually impacting others. But start with those three questions, and that will get you on the journey of finding out why you've been placed on this earth.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And business books in general, or self-help books around, leadership, and yours actually goes to the personal core, which I love, may not sell and likely won't as many books as Stephen King will. But I would argue that there's the potential to create more value than all of the book sales that Stephen King ever had from people taking the wisdom and applying it on the front lines in the real world to create value from reading your book.
Yes, thank you, Lee.
I love what you're saying there. And I think in a really great win-win sort of selfish way, it's a better world to live and interact with when people are thinking and acting in a value-creating way, and serving others, creating the conditions for others to be successful. I think is just absolutely fantastic, and it's just better for all of us, right? It's selfish in a win-win way, in my view, because it's in our best self-interest.
That's Lee. I bet there's only so many things you can buy yourself. Let's say you have all the money in the world. There are only so many cars you can drive. There are only so many homes you can live in. There's only so many basketball or concerts you can go to. But real satisfaction comes when someone looks you in the eye, Lee, and say, you made a difference in my life. That gives you a sense of accomplishment and feeling that no amount of money will give you that feeling. And then it starts to multiply. And now you start to see all these leaves hanging off of your tree. It really is a remarkable experience.
I'm sure you have stories of leaders you developed that went on to do amazing things. That when you're talking about this, that's what I see for somebody like you.
Yes.
You developed so many. So what are a couple of stories there?
Well, what a great story, and I write about it in the book. As you mentioned, I was president of Comcast West for 11 years, and now I'm still helping the company more in a reduced capacity. The gentleman that replaced me, Rich Jennings, he worked for me for 10 years, and I remember having a very difficult conversation with him, Lee, and I talk about it in the book. Very talented leader, but his dress would have given people the wrong impression about him and what he was about. And while we wish that were not the case, but I said, Rich, if this is something you're really interested in growing your career, you are creating a shield. You're creating a billboard that is not conducive to you growing. So this difficult feedback allowed him to make some adjustments without losing who he is. Nobody's saying changing who you are. No one's saying changing your character or your personality. We're just saying flex your style for the appropriate situation and adjust. And to see him go on, and now he's president of Comcast West and doing even better than I did, gives you a great sense of, responsibility and accomplishment. So at Comcast, we have 3 presidents that kind of run the day-to-day operations of Comcast Cable. 2 of the 3 worked for me for over a 12, 13-year period. And now to see them in those critical positions are just absolutely, incredible. And, and Lee, the final piece is, by the time this airs, it will be announced that I'm being inducted into the Cable Hall of Fame. And so to accomplish something like that, you can't do it on your own. There's only so many things you can do. It's because you've left a tree full of leaves of others that have gone on to great things. So that is my greatest accomplishment, is making the difference in the lives of others.